All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today on Beyond the Frame. Whether you're watching this live right now or you're going to watch a recorded version of this in the future, we appreciate you joining to learn more about how we can help the entire industry. And today, my guest is certainly someone who can and does help the entire industry. First and foremost, he's a journalist, right? And second of all, he's a very accomplished player with 30 PBA titles, 5 USBC Eagles, 2 gold medals for Team USA, and multiple Halls of Fame, including USBC. Owner, operator, director, all that for 11thframe.com. Please welcome Jeff Richgels.
Hey, Jay, great to be here. I like to say better to be a has-been than a never was. I'm sort of a has-been now.
You're not a has-been. You are and always will be, in my opinion. So just because you're not throwing the ball as much as you used to right now doesn't mean anything. That's for sure. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. We titled this "The Future of Competitive Bowling." I wanted to talk with you personally. First and foremost, you're a journalist. And to me, that kind of mindset that you have when it comes to looking at something objectively and trying to grab as many facts and details as you can, pull it together, and then make your own kind of synopsis, assumptions, whatever it may be, the story you're telling. I think you're able to do that very differently than most people in our industry, right? We have other journalists that do a great job too. I'm not trying to say that nobody else does it, but when you look at the Facebook world that we're all used to, in the social media world where everything is, God-given fact because it was broadcast on social media, we all know that's not true, right? We all know that sometimes people are very jaded or skewed when they're writing their opinions. You tend to show both sides of a story, and then you give your own personal opinion, which I really appreciate because there is plenty of room for everyone's opinion. As long as it's done from a factual point of view, I am a big fan of that. So thank you for doing that. I want to talk about the future of competitive bowling and what it looks like to you. So I want to start with, given our current situation with what we're going through with the pandemic and how the face of retail in general has changed, do you think that's going to have an impact on competitive play? And by competitive play, I don't mean necessarily only scratch bowling, right? Competitive bowling also encompasses team, individual, handicap play, non-traditional formats, anybody who is competitive in general. And we see these kinds of tournaments out there that aren't necessarily PBA events, but they're still considered competitive and they still drive competitive players to want to bowl. So that's the kind of play I'm talking about. What do you think about that, Jeff? Do you think there will be an impact?
I think it's almost inevitable that there's going to be some sort of impact. And I think the biggest part of the impact is going to be, as we like to say, our playing fields, our bowling centers. You can't have a tournament. You can't have a league. You can't compete if you don't have somewhere to do it. And especially in some of these states where the centers are still closed, we're getting to the crisis time. I've been using the term Armageddon for bowling.
Yeah.
We've already seen a lot of centers close, and I think in most cases, those are ones that were on the edge, considering closing. Their real estate value was so high that they maybe, as a bowling center, they were threatened just by having too much value in their location. Sure. So pandemic, no pandemic, it maybe just accelerated something that was going to happen. But now we're getting to this scary point where the league season is starting. If you're a proprietor and you can't be open when, in the summer, okay, especially up here north, you can, you plan that you're not going to have much income then. But if you get to Labor Day and you're not open, or you're at 25% business or even 50%, you're threatened with existence. As one of my friends who owns a center said, if I can't floor my leagues in a close to normal sense come the start of the season, the bank, I might as well just go hand my keys to the bank. And that's the biggest threat in my mind to competitive bowling, because 6 months or a year from now, I think medically the scientists will solve this. There'll be vaccines, there'll be antibody cocktails. Life will be able to return to a sense of normal or close to what it was before. But if we're back to bowling normally and we don't have anywhere to bowl, then then all of this is there's no hope. If you live in a town and you're a bowling center and you only have one and it's a 12-lane center or something, there's lots of that up here in the Midwest. If that closes and you don't have anywhere to go, are you going to drive 30, 40 miles to the next town in winter to bowl? Are you going to keep bowling tournaments when you can't bowl league? Those sorts of things. So to my mind, the biggest threat to competitive bowling out of the pandemic is the loss of playing fields.
That is a really important point to make there. And, we can take another look at that and say, well, okay, so let's just say we lose 10% of the bowling centers in the US because they had to close for this. Well, when we return to normal, wouldn't they come back as bowling centers? And I have to say, from being on the inside of the industry, yeah, there may be another bowling center built in your town, but will it be a traditional based model that you may have had there before? Especially in the kind of situations you're talking about, one center in town, they only have, 12, 14 lanes, whatever, and they have their primary revenue source is competitive play, league bowling. Period. They do open play, but they're not that FEC with multiple attractions location. And we were talking, we're going to have our webinar tomorrow on the future of competitive play. We're going to talk to some really accomplished owner operators, and including Mike Fagan, who's an accomplished PBA player too, right? And Jamie Brooks, and they're going to be on here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the business side of that and some of that, but this plays right into it. If a new center is built, will it offer league play? Well, this is interesting because now if you'd asked me this about a month ago, I'd say, well, no, I don't think it will. I think, when these traditional models fall to the ashes for whatever reason that may be, they're done. But now I'm starting to think a little differently, and here's why. If we look at the trends where we see revenue returning to normalcy, it's happening in those traditional base centers first because their base is comfortable coming into that facility. They already want to get back to bowling. They know it's safe for them. They're not relying on the mom and pops or the moms and the kids and the families who are looking for that alternative just yet, because they may not be ready to come back into the swing. So I'm hopeful that even if we do lose some centers now, that I think this may be a pivotal point for us where we kind of start to grow back into some competitive style arenas that are developed with that point in mind. That's just me being the optimist I am sometimes.
Did you can I
go ahead? Yeah.
Have you seen the comments that Chuck Landy made on my Facebook page on one of the threads?
Not.
He made some fascinating comments along those lines that jibe really good with what you're just saying. And he, for people who don't know, he was in the bowling business. He now works IBC Youth, I believe. He was a businessman. He was on the pro tour. He's the original two-hander. He was bowling two-handed when I was on tour in the 1980s. But he is a smart cookie, smart businessman, and a serious bowler in his day. And he was making the exact point that the bowling centers that cater to the more serious, if you consider regular league bowling serious versus open play or recreational play, he thinks they'll do better than the FECs.
Oh, they will.
Because their customers are loyal, they're used to bowling, it means more to them, they want to return. So perhaps it's a sad way to look at it, but maybe the competitive side of bowling will gain something in this versus the recreational side, because those are the customers that'll stick around more. So I hadn't thought about it that way, but it jives with what you're saying there. So maybe that, Chuck is a sharp cookie, and he made me think about it in a different way. So it made me feel good when he made those comments. I think that was last week, and it made me feel a little better about the future of more serious bowling.
Now that you said his comments, I do remember reading them, and I was agreeing with him then too. I think I hit like on one of them. What do you think the role of the PBA plays in this? Because they've been able to be on TV with much programming compared to any other, sport, and they've been getting great ratings. So how do you think that's going to fold into this little equation that we've got forming here?
Well, that is a fascinating, interesting topic, and I think, boy, it's been great to have the PBA guys still on there, and the timing of this was good for the PBA. It was terrible for the PWBA. It wiped out the whole season because it was in the summer, but the PBA had most of the season done and in the books, other than finishing the animal patterns and a couple of majors. So they got a break in the timing there. And if they can return next winter with real tournaments, not these special events, I think the PBA will be in good shape, especially if Bolero's able to get through this, financially.
Yeah.
And the big thing I'm concerned about, it's been great to have these extra events. The top stars have had a chance to make some money. We've seen them on Fox and FS1 and CBS Sports Network. They've gotten some decent ratings. So we've kept bowling in front of the public eye that way. Here's two things I'm concerned about. Number one, the, I don't want to say the non-superstar bowlers. How many
Yeah,
of them are
the
going
tier
to still
two
be?
players.
Yes. Are they still going to be out there on tour when it returns? What have they been doing? They, unlike those superstar guys, they've had no opportunity really to make any money. Regionals are finally starting again. But what did they go and get jobs? Are they going to return to chasing the tour? How will that impact the tour? And then, of course, playing fields will work in there. Will host centers and sponsors, will they be able to put up the money to host tour events next year? And how much of a hit will Bolero take? Some of the momentum that the PBA had going, we were thinking, oh boy, this could really, they might gain more sponsors. Prize funds could go up next year. The PBA had such a good run of momentum going. Is this all going to be knocked down because of that? Would maybe the new sponsors they would have got in 2021, will those not happen? And God forbid if the pandemic, if the scientists don't get this solved by next winter, like we're hoping for, well, then what happens? What if we can't have a regular tour?
A regular tour, yeah. What's
starting in
January?
Then? Good God, what? I mean, all sports are asking those questions. We
Sure.
have that going with college football and college basketball. But the more you're teeter on the edge of not being rich and that sort of thing, as bowling is, and we had this momentum going, and hopefully things will be able to pick back up. And we didn't lose a huge chunk of the season. Hopefully they'll be able to pick back up and things will go forward. But it's scary times, and we're not going to know until 6 months from now.
We're not. And you know what? I do have to say this. I really, I've not met Coley in person, sadly, because I didn't get to, but I really appreciate what she's done with the tour itself and the brand of PBA. I really think she's not a traditionalist. Remember, you're a traditionalist. I'm not a traditionalist, but I do respect some of the traditional values and the traditional formats and stuff. I don't think they should be eliminated, but I am a big fan of, look what she did. Okay, we can't do X, Y, Z. I'm going to take the ball and do C and Q and V, because that's what we can do now. And look what it does. So we never know what's going to come from, like you said, from adversity, because necessity is the mother of invention, as we know.
Sure.
And she just said, well, here we go. We're going to do this. Let's do these formats. So I love the fact that they were still able to move forward. It may not have been in the exact direction that we assumed it should be, but maybe that's more attractive. Maybe that's something that is going to cause the sport of bowling to be looked at in a more positive light. Who knows? The future is going to tell. But I want to say hi to a couple people watching right now. I know Scott Pohl and Brian Hirsch are on. Hi, Scott and Brian. If you got a question for Jeff or myself about this topic, go ahead and type it in the comments. We'll do our best to address it. But I do have a couple things, other areas that I want to touch on. The youth funnel, I call it the youth funnel. Things are so different nowadays. The youth used to be, Saturday morning juniors. Well, if you were in a big city, not me, I was in a little small town, so it was Saturday morning. It was either 8 o'clock in the morning or 11, or they had a 1:30 shift, but that was all the losers. Nobody bowled at 1:30. It was all the new ones. But now, if you were in a big city, you could have gotten to bowl on a Sunday night or a Monday night. They did that everywhere. But it was the local center started the funnel. They're juniors, and they came up, and then you had your state and your county and your city levels. And then heaven forbid you got to go to some kind of regional or national finals for something that was like the pinnacle. So you kind of were taught this funnel system early on, and that's what drove the play. Doesn't exist today. It literally is just gone. So, but yet youth bowling is as strong on the competitive side as it ever was, with junior gold, with team masters, all these big events. So how do you think the youth are being impacted then? Are they not affected at all by this?
Well, it's really interesting to see how youth bowling is. You just touched on it. There's the just casual weekly youth league bowler. That's almost gone. We only have a couple of I live here in Madison. We had a giant youth programs at several centers here, and now it's down to just 1, 2, maybe 3. It's amazing. One has got a fantastic program, but the place Mark McDowell and I grew up at really doesn't have any youth leagues anymore. And we had shifts on Friday and 2 on Saturday and all that, and traveling league on Sunday. But then we didn't have high school bowling. College bowling wasn't big. There was no scholarship tournaments when I grew up. Nothing like that.
There too. Keep going. What else didn't you have? What else didn't you have?
Junior gold.
Didn't have any. Keep going. You're missing one big thing. You didn't have the internet.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So interestingly enough, I think technology has been our friend in that aspect because kids learn so differently now. They're not learning about bowling from Joe Smith, Gina's father, who's the coach here, and he runs the junior program at this center. That's how it was. You got to go see Joe. He's going to help me, and I'll be a better bowler. You don't even bother with that now. You just get online, you watch the PBA, you go to Jason Belmonte's fan page. He'll give you a couple tips. Shannon O'Keefe will tell you what you're doing wrong. I mean, this is how the kids learn. So, do we need that youth funnel for this reason anymore? And the interesting answer is, I think, no, it's not needed. But these events are extremely important to these kids. So, and we see more and more of them being created. So I think for me, that's where I'm voting for. I think, technology is our friend there and it's helped us. But technology is not always our friend.
No.
I'll get to there in a minute. And coaching. What about coaching? How do you think that's changed and will continue to impact the future of competitive play?
Well, I mean, compare coaching today to when I started. We didn't have anything like, and again, it's internet. Kids today, not only do they have the high school programs and the college programs, but they can have access to Mike Jasnaw and Mike Shady, this whole new thing, backstage bowling, that my friend Mike Flanagan got together with the O'Keefes and Mike and started. And you have anywhere, Mark Baker's group and every
Angelo's group. I mean, there's so many really good ones.
You can hook up with so many different great coaches, even in the midst of a pandemic. You can use internet technology to get coaching from just about anybody you want if you can afford them. And you had it, no pandemic. When my day, I had the people around me, unless I traveled, that's all I had. And we didn't have, Dick Ritker once, I think I went to a camp or a clinic that he put on. But other than that, and today kids, I'm going to go get a lesson from Mike Jasnaw or Mike Shady or
I'm going to go
Mark Baker.
I'm going to go to the IBC, yeah. And I'm going to have Ron or what's her name? I'm sorry, not what's her name. My brain is like frying out on names here. But all the coaches that are working there, it's like they're instantly accessible. And what baffles my mind amazingly, and I just bowled with Stephanie Alexander. She's on right now. She says, hi, Stephanie and Mike Cannington. Hello from sunny Southwest Florida. Yes, hello, Mike. How are you doing? Stephanie's son, Keegan Alexander, right? He just bowled a little local tournament in Killeen. It was just a 4-game qualifier, a little match play thing. And it was on a tougher pattern. It was on a 48-footer, and, that's not my A game. But because I bowled 156 the first game, and I got beat by 60 pins by him. And, he had the high game out of all the people bowling. And I was just like, this kid is 13 years old, and what he's talking about hurts my brain. He's like, they just have this absorption of knowledge, and they look at bowling so differently than we did when we were kids, and they look at it differently than me as an adult. And I feel like
they're smarter now about bowling than I was probably when I was 21 years old.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't have exposure to all the things they can be exposed to now that I couldn't even dream of in the 1970s. And it took me forever. You had to learn all that basically by personal experience. And I mean, I'm sure there's kids now like him that know more about bowling than I learned until maybe even before I went on the tour and learned it there.
Sure. Brian says there still has to be a little funnel. Look at the youth age from 4 to middle school. They need to still have direction. And Brian, I think you're right, but that sort of happens organically through family interaction, through visual, through watching PBA, through high school bowling or bowling clubs in middle school, things of that nature. So does it make them a competitor? No, but it probably brings out the people who like to do that more than not. So, I think that leaves it up to them. And then Scott says, in your opinion, who can the public who wants to play national events like, say, PBA or PBA 50s reach out to in order to get info on the future?
Whew.
I know, right? Scott, what the heck? What are you eating today? When you know that, let us know, because we don't know either.
Yeah, we don't know the future. I mean, has there ever been a time I'm 58 now. In my lifetime, this is the most uncertain point in American history, world history, that I can remember. To try and even sketch out what the world's going to be like 2 months from now is hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And trying to think 6 months and a year, you're just like throwing paint against the wall or whatever. Even scientists in that, because we don't know until all of this is solved scientifically. we can't really begin to put the pieces back together of our world and our economy.
No.
And, it's just, this is a year that 1968 will be about the last year that was anything historically like this for,
right?
for change and craziness and chaos.
And does that mean it's going to happen more frequently in the future? Who knows, right? So we talked about coaching, we talked about the youth funnel, and I just want to say that there's so many good youth bowlers out there now that I don't even know. But the ones that I do know about that I've experienced personally, like Keegan, like Julian Salinas, who just, finished second in Teen Masters and he won it last year and he had that amazing final game. It was down to the last ball kind of deal. This kid, I watch him bowl. He's an amazing young man. He is disciplined. He is smart as ever. He plays like 20 instruments. You know what I mean? Like he's got that brain. And yet here he is as a competitor. And the coaching was real big key, right? He works with Donna and Carol all the time. What do they teach him? They teach him how to get his mind right. They show him the CAT system. They show him these things that you and I would be like, yeah, well, Donna tries to help me on the CATs. And she's like, see, when your third step, and I'm like, Donna, I can't change my third step now. I'm 55 or 54. Where am I going? I'm going to take the same third step now as I took from, but the kids, they learn, like you said, they learn differently. So A plus to all the kids out there, the parents that are helping their children realize a dream, whether it be their own dream or their kid's dream, doesn't matter. It's all working to your advantage. And I appreciate that. I do want to talk about technology though. Oh no, let's talk about USBC. What's their role in this whole thing? Does USBC play a role in growing competitive play? Yes or no?
Oh yeah.
You do.
Absolutely.
You think they do? I think opposite.
Really? Why is that?
Well, because I think growing the competitive market personally, and this is my personal opinion, guys. Remember, I'm allowed to have one.
Yep.
I think personally the growing the competitive player lies with the business owner, not with an organization that the player doesn't even know about, possibly. So if you look at bowling centers that I've ever run or that I've seen, been a part of being on the management staff, we developed those bowlers. We went out to open play bowlers and chatted with them on the lane and said, hey, I've seen you here twice this week. You look like you have a good time doing this. Would you like to do a league? Oh, I'm not good enough. It's okay. And you have to explain to them what that is. And you get them in a beginner league, something that's a little fun. And, we grow that player into a competitive player firsthand. USBC, or back in the day, ABC, WIBC, AJBC, that's how old I am, YABA, whatever. They didn't play that part yet. They only played a part after you joined and became a member and even understood what that was. So that's why I say more in the retention than. I don't even think they have anything to do with retention, Jeff. And here's why. They don't control the environment that I come and spend my money in. Well, the owner operator controls that. So I might enjoy the heck out of my league, but Jim over here on this team is such an a-hole. I can't stand bowling in this league. So I quit. Whose fault is that? Is it the bowling center's fault? Is it USBC's fault? It's not. It's just circumstance. And that's the point I try to make. I think that the USBC doesn't play a role. And I think that they don't play as big of a role as what people might assume they should or could play. And I think that in the long run ends up hurting USBC's credibility and their vision, because we're expecting them to drive membership, but membership doesn't happen until conversion happens, and conversion doesn't happen from a mail from USBC. It happens in the local bowling center. That's my view. So
and then aren't you kind of making the case that I mean,
I know where you're going with this. I think I know where you're going.
Why do we need you? You're making the case for the people out there that say, what am I paying $20 to this group for? Or
here's what you're paying $20 to this group for. They need to govern the sport. So that is important for the future of competitive play. Yes. Because if there's no governance of the sport, then we're off the deep end. And it's, we see that. We see that on these non-certified events that make up their own rules and choose their own way to do things. They get thousands of people coming and bowl them, and there's always fighting and complaining because someone cheated. They used an average from 26 years ago, whatever. There's a bunch of rules, a bunch of reasons why it may not have been as successful for them as it could have been. But USBC does play a role there, in my opinion. The governing bodies should still nurture the competitive side of the sport.
how do
and
you
I
sell
think
people that? That's the key.
exactly. You're almost doing it from a philanthropic point of view after the fact. I need to donate. I need to be a member of this organization for the future of our sport. And you and I understand that, and people of our age group really understand that too, which is why we pay our dues with no questions asked every year, because we know the value of it. But to a new player who's coming in, who isn't as, ingrained as us, they don't understand sometimes. So maybe it's time to let the membership part of the USBC go to the proprietors and keep the USBC as the national governing body. Can we figure out how to fund all the things the USBC needs the money for? Maybe. I don't know. That's not for me. I'm not on the board anymore. So other people will can have that discussion, I'm sure. Let's talk about technology, though. Do you like technology? Are you for technology? Or because you are a purist and you're a traditionalist, are you a fan of it, or are you kind of cautious, or you don't like it? Where are you on that scale?
I'm definitely an embracer of technology. I mean, that's how society advances. I mean, technology is going to get us out of this pandemic, and without it, nothing would get us out of this pandemic. Scientists who are going to invent drugs and antibody cocktails and vaccines are going to get us out of this pandemic. And I mean, in bowling, I know there's always this whole thing, and we could spend the next 6 hours arguing about ball technology and all that kind of stuff. You and I have lived through that. I grew up with, started with rubber balls and then yellow dots and white dots and all. I
remember bowling my first 700 with the blue angle.
Yeah, I believe it.
Because it was like such an incredible ball.
My first 300 was an LT48. So,
see?
And so, I mean, I've lived it all and seen it all, but I try very hard not to be the get off of my lawn guy, even at 58. And I understand in most technology, you can't put the genie can't go back in the bottle.
No.
And so learn to live with it. Learn to have other technology to compensate for technologies grow together and compensate together. We have, synthetic lanes instead of wood lanes. We have ball technology has changed, pin technology, oiling technology. I oiled lanes with a spray thing and a little Century 100 and a Roto Buff when I started, and now we have these sophisticated lane machines. Yeah. And now we have these, oiled by one board, and so I mean,
the inkjet printer, we call it.
Yeah, and it's technology is an inevitable thing, and try to live with it, and find a way to corral it, if that's the right word. But try to live with it and make the best of it, because it's always going to be coming. You can't stop it.
Scott wants us to discuss the 11th frame event coming up, if we haven't already discussed it. We will, Scott. I promise you we will. I do want to read a couple of comments. Stephanie says, I think USBC should need to focus on the scholarship aspect of bowling for the youth. I always find many parents who take their kids bowling on Saturdays that have no clue that their child can earn scholarships. And I think it could really grow the youth aspect if they used it as a tool. I don't disagree with that, Stephanie. I agree. But you're part of the solution to that, and you're doing your job as an ambassador of the sport by informing those parents. So keep doing that, and let's help spread the word. And Brian Hirsch says so it sounds like maybe BPAA needs to get more information out there at the center level. BPAA is a membership organization, and not all centers are members of their organization. So that is true, but it also isn't the end all be all, in my opinion. So could they get information to every center? Sure. And do I believe they could do that? Absolutely. You have the right people running that organization that know how to make that happen. So yeah, I think it could be true. Gerald Sanders says, I like the idea of Teen Masters competitors all have to use the same ball, just drilled differently. I wish there was a way to incorporate into overall bowling, but I know that with ball manufacturers, it would be hard to do. That's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed bowling, and I call them gimmick tournaments, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, because anything that's different is a gimmick. A 9-pin tap tournament, a weird format. My tournament is, in a sense, a gimmick, the Sunday finals that Mike Flanagan came up with. So I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but I've always enjoyed bowling a plastic ball tournament. In this case, it's urethane. Those are fun to do, whether that can be all of bowling when the guy wants to go to league with his high-powered ball and see it hook and shoot 300s. Again, you're not putting the technology genie back in the bottle. is there room for more of that competition? I can't wait
For
to
sure.
see the adult one,
For
and
sure.
that Gary's talking about running next May. Now, I hope that he's able to work with ball manufacturers to have them let their
Yeah.
superstar staffers go and bowl with bowling balls that might only be made by one of the companies or something. I don't know how that's all
Right.
going to work, but I hope we get to see Belmo and Sean and Anthony Simonson and Chris Prather and all those guys, see them competing in the same way that the kids did in the recent Teen Masters, which, by the way, Gary did a fabulous job with all his protocols to deal with COVID.
Yeah.
And I heard pretty much nothing but good things. And
I also heard nothing but good also. Yeah, I agree. Well, we talked about the balls. I remember being so frustrated with twister pins when they came out, and then having to go bowl nationals on them, and I wanted to burn the building down because my ball could not strike, and I just was like, I don't know how. But I've learned to adapt to them. Mel's Lone Star Lanes in Austin uses twister, and we bowled tournaments there, and I actually won one. So the roof didn't fall in. So something must have happened, along the way.
They still exist? There's still places using them, really?
Well, they were using them. I don't think they're using them anymore. But, pins, balls, lane oil. What about the machine? What about string pin machines? We talked a little bit about this before we went live, but I wanted to save our discussion for live.
I found the whole tournament to be the tournament that happened in Florida. I wrote some about in Naples, right?
Some strings attached.
In end of July. And John Ho, he invited me to that, and it would have been cool to bowl on that. I've never bowled on string pins. I have no personal experience with them, but I've watched a lot. Stuart Williams always is showing videos of bowling at the center that he practices at. They have one of the string pin setups, and George Frilingos, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
from Australia.
I remember watching his from Australia a few years ago. I think it was like 16. That was where I first saw them. And I find it really fascinating because it's so different how the pins fall. The flush strikes always strike that I haven't seen. There's no solid 8s and solid 9s. And the ring 10s, you hardly see those because the strings catch them. And yet you have some of the other pin fall doesn't. You don't see as many messengers. And
you get a lot of fast 8s, yeah.
Yep. And the thing that I found most interesting, and the thing I wanted to watch for in that tournament, what was the scoring differences between the bowling on the strings and the bowling on the traditional pin setters. And if I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they ended up being within a pin or two.
I think it was 2 pins different, yeah.
Yeah, yep. And because Mike Cannington kept track of all that, and he sent me all that stuff. And to me, that kind of is what it amounts to being the biggest thing is if we're going to find a way to incorporate string bowling into competitive bowling, it can't be 10 pins difference in scoring on the same lane condition. It can't be so ridiculously, pins can fall differently, but they can't fall so ridiculously different level wise and scoring wise that they just make a farce of it. Now, you can be mad or prefer the way pin falls on traditional versus strings, and that's a personal choice. And you can argue about when the string knocks a 10 pin out and it isn't a ring in 10, or
but then you could also argue that a two-hander sends a 3-wall messenger that you've never seen, which is fair. Mike Cannington, by the way, says it's 1.6 pins difference between the two. And you have some high-level players there, and there was a lot of data used in that. So I don't think the range for error is far off of that.
I was actually surprised that it was that close. And from what I'd seen in a lot of the other, I thought it would be more like 5 pins difference or something.
That's exactly what I thought it would be. I thought it'd be 4 or 5 pins, and to be 1.6, I think it's amazing. I think it's going to open up. Now, why are we going to see more string pins? I think I shared this with you. We're probably going to see a lot more string pin setters in the U.S. Overseas, they're already taken over, right? We have whole chains that are replacing their things and it's mainly from a necessity point of view. They're much lower in cost to operate, first of all. So if you have a facility and you are trying to control your operating costs, that is one of the largest, besides payroll, obviously. But here's the big kicker, which I'm blown away by. Our newest machine, the Edge String from Cubica, it can be operated by a 17-year-old worker. They can clear any kind of stop you want. Almost anybody that works in your center can go down and fix a stop, almost. And and they can do the annual maintenance on it. When's the last time your snack bar person did annual maintenance on your 8270s or your
Yep.
82s? I mean, like these machines are complex, right? This machine is complex, but it's all technology driven. So I really think we're going to see a lot more of that. And does that mean we'll have less playing field for traditional type tournaments? Or does it mean that we will adapt and understand that string pin is still a valid way, just like twister pins were still valid, even though they felt totally different too? So I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I'll defer to you for what you think the answer is going to be.
Well, here's what we're going to face. It's going to be the same thing, like I said before, when it comes to ball technology. You adapt, you accept, you embrace, you try to corral and adapt to it. And this is going to be a huge, I think, obviously a huge decision for USBC going forward. How are they going to treat string pin setters? Because the economics of it, from everything that's been explained to me, is undeniable. And if we're going to build new bowling centers, and you can show this to a proprietor that can build it, and the cost to build is less, and then the cost to maintain is less, the cost of payroll is less, how can you expect a person like that to, if they can
make a
as much
business decision to choose
and they're business people
option
first? Okay, so then what does that do to our bowling? If I'm bowling league at a center with free fall, and here's the string center and the same association, are the averages for players in those two centers going to be used for their city and state tournaments the same? USBC is kind of facing sort of an oncoming, slow-moving train that it needs to get in front of and not get run over by, I think, because the way everybody's explained it to me, this is kind of inevitable. And you're saying this too, the inevitability of this.
I believe
from
it
a business
personally.
standpoint. So, and okay, then there's going to be lots of bowlers out there. I might be one of them. I haven't bowled on them, but what I've seen, it's not what I know, and it's not what I've grown up with. It's not what I've lived. Okay, I have to not get this, the old guy, get off my lawn, you kids, with this string stuff. I might, if I'm going to keep bowling, I'm going to have to find a way to accept that maybe this is going to be part of what we have going forward. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't save money for a center to spend the money to replace all their free falls. So it'll be a slow and gradual change as new centers are built. You're not going to tear your machines out to put them in.
Yeah, from what I hear, they pay for themselves in the first couple of years when you replace. It's that much of a cost saving.
If you spend the money to tear out,
I've heard some stories. Yeah, I'm not the salesperson, guys, so don't quote me. I'm not speaking on behalf of Cubica. I'm just speaking about what I've heard. They're very, very, very quick return on your.
Well, then things change. If that's really true, then things may change a lot faster.
And we're seeing this. What will happen is, people have a VIP area with 8 lanes, and then maybe they hold league on 9 through 40 or whatever, and they never put league in 1 through 8. So they're going and they're replacing 1 through 8 with string because that's a more casual customer in general. And they're seeing the cost savings they receive there. And then they can apply that 4 more times throughout the building and go, makes financial sense for us to do this kind of move when it's time. But I agree with you. I don't think they're going to take over altogether, but they're going to be a bigger part of the action.
And here's your company that's going to could drive a lot of this, and that's Bolero, because they have 300 centers, because they have the PBA. If they convert some centers and hold some PBA events there, and people get to see it and get used to it, and then we'll have this whole thing. How accepted is it? And how do the PBA pros talk about it? I listened to Tom Doherty on the Beef and Barnsley show talking about it. He's kind of middling. I don't want to characterize and put any words in his mouth, but you could see that it's different. It's not what they are used to. How is it going to be accepted? But it's not a matter of, okay, if you're going to stand back here and throw a temper tantrum, I don't want to bowl on those. If all your bowling centers are converting to those, okay, you either bowl on them or you don't bowl. That's what it's going to come down to.
It's exactly true. All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour here, Jeff, and I feel like I've really put you through the paces, right? No, it's only been 40 minutes. I'm counting the time we chatted before. But I do have one more. Do I have one more point I want to make? Oh, I do. I want to ask you to talk about your upcoming tournament and tell us about that unique format on Sunday. And is there still spots open? Because that's what Scott wanted to know.
Actually, it is full with a waiting list. It filled
Okay.
156 spots very quickly. However, it's always good to get on the waiting list because, especially in a pandemic year,
Yeah,
there
you
may
never
be people
know.
that Iowa right now has no restrictions, basically, other than the city of Dubuque has a mask mandate. So if you're
Okay.
going to compete in it, you're going to wear a mask, except when you're on the approach. That's no choice. The casino, it's inside the Diamond Joe Casino. Joe put out of the GIBA, Joe Engelkiss, put out a thing, said there's going to be a security guard up there patrolling the bowling center. Diamond Joe is a casino company, Boyd Gaming. They don't mess around.
Right.
So you're going to wear it all the time. If you don't, you're going to be out on the street. That's not our choice. That's the way it's going to be. But I think that there may be some people, based on our odd situation in the world right now, the people on the waiting list will have a better chance to get in. And the waiting list is not very big right now. So Joe is the guy to talk to at the Greater Iowa Bowling Association. And there's a couple of weeks left, but it's the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. There's a sweeper Friday night with, I think, 1,000 added money. And then there's more than 3,000 added money for the tournament Saturday and Sunday. 3 squads of qualifying, 6 games on Saturday, and then come back Sunday. The top 48, top 40, and they bowl all the way through 12 games, and we use what's called the Flanagan format because Mike Flanagan came up with this. The top score gets 48 points.
Ooh.
Second highest score 47, third highest score 46, down to the lowest score gets 1 point each game. So there's 48 times 12 potential points that you could get bonus pins you can get. It takes away the I'm losing my 30 bonus pins and I shot 269, but I bowled a guy that had 279. The guy next
And
to
you
me
were
had
the second high in the whole building.
Yes. So you're going to get 47 and the guy's going to get 48. So it takes away this head-to-head thing. And we bowl across the entire house. There's 24 lanes being used. So everybody bowls one game on each
On every pair.
So you
Love
take that.
that.
So everybody gets the same chance to have on each pair. And then there's a step ladder after it back on fresh oil. And it's a really fun format to bowl. In the years I bowled in it, I only made the cut one time. I'm getting old. There's a lot of great young players on there. Chris Prather bowled it a few years ago before he was well known. And Mitch Hoope's been in it, all the top Midwest guys. But I was like in 28th place out of 48 with about 8 games to go, 6 games, halfway through 6 games to go. And I made like a huge run with about the next 4 games, all 230 or better. And it's a pretty tough condition. We use a derivative of the U.S. Open pattern that 2015 we've been using. So the scores are usually pretty low. And I went all the way up to like 8th place because when you get hot like that, all those bonus pins, you can really make a run. So it's a fun, different format. It's a gimmick and a positive.
I love gimmick tournaments. You don't have to convince me. I'll come to any gimmick tournament. That's my thing. I love that. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Also, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you having the ability to talk with us and open and honestly. We went a lot longer than we normally do, people. I thank you for watching us today. I want to tell you all about our webinar tomorrow. I've got 2 amazing guests on. Jamie Brooks, owner-operator of Plano Super Bowl, Cowtown Bowling Center, and JB's Allen Bowl here in Texas now. But, you know, he's an owner-operator extraordinaire from years gone by, and he's owned and operated many, many successful facilities. I also had Mike Fagan on the show, Triple Shift Entertainment, and they have, I think, 9 facilities, not 9 or 11. I might have the number wrong. All throughout the Midwest, right? Up to Minnesota, Ohio, everywhere. And Mike is a very accomplished player and a very smart business person too.
Yes.
So they're going to talk about what they think the future of bowling looks like from a business perspective.
That ought to be cool.
Right? It's going to be a good show. So I'm going to take some of our cues that we chatted about today and throw them at them tomorrow too. It's just
they know a lot more about the business side than this guy here. That's for sure. I'll be curious to hear what they have to say business-wise.
Well, if all of the players in our industry knew as much about bowling as you did, we would not be in the situation we're in right now. That much I will tell you, my friend. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And then again, next week, we'll be back with more Beyond the Frame episodes. So until then, make sure you join us and keep your mindset in the right frame of mind and grow your business. Take care, everybody. Be safe.